It felt strangely familiar as I sat there, watching everything happen again. Chloe's grandmother, Mrs. Evans, was sitting at the head of the table, and she spoke calmly. "Considering you'll be graduating from college soon," she said, looking between Chloe and me, "now seems like a good time to set an engagement date." It was in that moment that I understood I'd somehow been given a second chance, sent back in time. Before I could fully process my confused thoughts, a voice I knew well spoke up beside me. "I disagree," Chloe said. She seemed relaxed, completely at ease, but her words were entirely different from what she'd said in the past timeline. "I already like someone, and it's not Mark." She glanced briefly at me. "This engagement isn't going to happen." I realized then that I wasn't the only one who had returned to this point in time. Chloe's grandmother managed to keep her anger in check. "In what position are you to challenge my decision?" she asked stiffly. Chloe just smiled and looked over at me again, her tone casual. "I already told you I don't like you," she said directly to me. "So why do you still want to marry me? Are you obsessed or something?" In the next instant, Mrs. Evans threw her chopsticks down forcefully, clearly furious. "You insolent girl!" Chloe slowly stood up. "You only want me to marry him so the family has an heir, right?" Her smile had a mocking edge. "If that's the case, why don't I just take him up to a room tonight and get it over with?" That remark finally made her grandmother lose control. She picked up her water glass and threw it, hitting Chloe on the forehead. Chloe laughed, a self-deprecating sound, and shot me a look devoid of any emotion before turning to leave the room. "Mark, go bring her back for Grandma," Mrs. Evans urged me, breathing heavily. Pressured by everyone else at the table, I reluctantly got up and followed Chloe out. My real intention was just to head straight back to school, but as soon as I stepped out of the restaurant, I saw Chloe standing there with her first love, Sam. "What do you want now?" Chloe asked, stepping slightly in front of Sam as if to protect him, watching me with guarded eyes. In our previous life, Sam had received an anonymous text message about Chloe's engagement to me. Distraught, he'd gotten into a fatal car accident on his way to see her. Chloe had always been convinced that I was the one who sent that text. "Grandma asked me to bring you back," I stated, keeping my tone neutral and businesslike. Sam anxiously tugged at Chloe's sleeve. "Chloe, don't go back there." Chloe gently touched his face, reassuring him, before turning back to me. "I already made my position clear," she said firmly. "I am not getting engaged to you." Her impatience was obvious. "Also, please stop bothering me." Her determination actually brought me a sense of relief. It meant that in this life, I wouldn't be forced into a relationship with her. Any feelings I once had for Chloe had died off gradually with every public embarrassment she put me through in our past life together. I started to walk around them, planning to head back to school, but Sam called out to me. "Mark, could you promise me something?" I stopped. "Promise what?" He bit his lip nervously. "Promise not to bother Chloe anymore." His voice was quiet, but steady. "Last time, when I went to your dorm room to check on something for the student council, I accidentally saw your journal. Didn't it say in there that you like Chloe?" He seemed hesitant, but determined. "I'm asking you now, as Chloe's current boyfriend, to please stay away from her." I stepped closer to him, looking him directly in the eye. "You went through my personal things?" Back in high school, I always kept my journal locked in a drawer. Sam seemed intimidated and took a small step back. "It was just a routine room check." Chloe frowned slightly, again moving to shield him. "He's right, Mark. He didn't mean any harm." She then spoke softly to reassure Sam. "He doesn't need to promise anything. I don't like him, so even if he bothers me, it won't matter." With that, she prepared to leave with Sam. But that diary contained many private thoughts I couldn't easily share. How could he justify going through someone else's belongings without permission, and act so calm about it? I followed them down the street and grabbed Sam's arm. "Don't you think you owe me an apology?" Sam bit his lip again, stubbornly refusing to back down. "I don't think I did anything wrong." I felt a surge of anger mixed with disbelief. Doesn't your upbringing teach you that it's wrong to snoop through someone's private things? Maybe my words hit harder than I intended, because as soon as I said them, Sam's eyes started to well up. "Enough, Mark!" Chloe irritably pulled my hand off Sam's arm. Just then, the traffic light at the corner turned green. In the next second, a car came speeding around the turn, heading straight for us. There was no time to react or dodge. Perhaps influenced by the memory of the past tragedy, Chloe immediately pulled Sam out of the way. The screech of the car's tires stopping was alarmingly close. Fortunately, the car only grazed my ankle, causing a slight scrape, and I stumbled and fell to the ground. "Sam, are you hurt?" Chloe held on to Sam, immense relief washing over her when she saw he was unharmed. They were so caught up in their own relief and concern for each other that they didn't even seem to notice the driver of the car angrily speeding away. Once she was absolutely certain Sam was okay, Chloe finally seemed to remember I was there. She saw me trying to push myself up from the pavement. Under the flickering streetlight, I lifted my head, and our eyes met in silence. After a moment's pause, she let out a soft, cold chuckle. Her curiosity seemed piqued. "Do you think this is karma?" she asked quietly. She still firmly believed I was responsible for Sam's accident in the previous life, no matter how many times I had denied it. I turned my gaze away from the couple as they walked away. Ignoring the stinging pain in my ankle, I stood up and brushed the dirt off my clothes. Thankfully, I genuinely no longer had feelings for her, so this incident wouldn't cause me any lingering sadness. Chloe's grandfather, Mr. Evans, often invited me over to their house in the following days. He kindly advised me not to hold on to any grudges against Chloe, explaining her personality. No matter what I said in response, he seemed set on his course. "Chloe is just as willful now as she's always been," he remarked one afternoon. "Her Aunt Sarah is really the only one who can manage her." Chloe's Aunt Sarah was also known to be the real head of the family business-wise. She was the only one who still carried her grandfather's original family name. My only previous interaction with her had been about a year ago. I'd gotten drunk at a party, played truth or dare, and ended up impulsively kissing a random woman sitting at the table next to ours. Later, when Chloe introduced Sarah as her aunt during a family gathering, I felt incredibly embarrassed and wished I could disappear. As Mr. Evans was chatting, a thoughtful look suddenly came over his face. He clapped his hands together lightly and muttered to himself almost under his breath, "Let's handle it this way, then." At that time, I had absolutely no idea what he was planning. About a week later, Mr. Evans managed to trick me into going to the family's hotel. I arrived dripping wet from a sudden downpour. He handed me a room key card, telling me to go upstairs and wait, assuring me someone would bring me dry clothes shortly. But when I unlocked the door, entered the room, and turned on the lights, I was completely taken aback. A strange, sweet scent filled the air. A woman was leaning against the headboard of the bed, not even looking up as I entered. Her voice was sharp when she spoke. "Get out." It was Sarah. I instantly recognized the unusual scent in the room. It was likely some kind of aphrodisiac or relaxant. I turned to leave, trying the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was clearly locked from the outside. "What's going on? Mr. Evans?" "I said get out. Don't you understand?" Her voice was now laced with impatience. "I want to leave too," I stammered, anxiously twisting the handle again. "But I can't open the door." Sarah paused, her breathing seeming a little uneven. Then I heard footsteps approaching me. "Why is it you?" she asked, pulling my arm to make me face her. Only then did I feel how hot her hand was, and it was trembling slightly. "Auntie Sarah." I called her respectfully, trying to remind her of our connection through Chloe, hoping it might bring some clarity to the situation. Sarah didn't answer immediately, just stared at me intently. I heard Chloe broke off the engagement with you, she stated. I nodded, unsure why she was bringing this up now. She seemed to step a fraction closer, her eyelashes fluttering. So, you don't like her anymore? Influenced by the scent I had unknowingly inhaled quite a bit of, my reactions were sluggish. Without really thinking it through, I slowly replied, "Nope." She chuckled softly, though her tone didn't sound like she was seeking confirmation. Is that right? I looked up slowly, feeling helpless but direct in my gaze. The gentle rise in the room's temperature was making me feel restless, a kind of stifling heat I couldn't seem to shake off. Instinctively, I felt a strong urge, searching for some kind of release or remedy. A faint smile played on Sarah's lips as she reached out and brushed the side of my face with her hand. Feeling uneasy? I didn't respond verbally, but found myself fixated on her lips right in front of me. I wondered absently if they would feel cool to the touch. "Say something," she prompted. I could see different emotions swirling in her eyes, yet her rational tone made it seem like I was the one being impatient. I lowered my head, placing my hands on her shoulders, leaning in. Just then, her phone rang abruptly. Sarah tutted, seemingly ready to toss it aside, but paused when she saw the caller ID. She eventually answered it. "Auntie Sarah, you're back." It was Chloe's voice. A moment of clarity hit me. I met Sarah's gaze, and the impulse to kiss her halted. Sarah responded with a simple, "Mm-hmm," her hand pressing lightly against the back of my neck, subtly urging me towards her again. The small gap between us closed once more, our lips nearly touching. "Where are you, Auntie? I'll come find you," Chloe's voice continued from the phone. A flash of panic surged through me. I instinctively grabbed the fabric on Sarah's shoulder, unintentionally bumping her collarbone in my nervousness. Sarah hissed softly, "Be gentle, will you?" "Sorry," I murmured, my head spinning slightly. "I didn't mean to." The phone line went silent for a moment. Then Chloe asked, "Auntie, who are you talking to? I think I've heard that voice before." I tensed up, my eyes widening. Sarah calmly spoke into the phone. "Your future uncle-in-law," and then hung up. I wasn't focused on her clever deflection at that moment. I couldn't seem to regain my senses, entirely consumed by the presence of the person right in front of me. Sarah led me further into the room, asking curiously as we moved, "Are you wanting something?" She sat down on the edge of the bed, near my legs. I nodded earnestly, leaning down again to kiss her. Sarah smiled, turning her head slightly to avoid the kiss. I'm too old to play games where someone just hits and runs after it's over. She was 6 years older than me, perhaps just old enough to use "too old" jokingly. "So, if you're not going to take responsibility afterward, I'll definitely call the police. Understand?" It felt like standing under a plum tree on a hot day, throat parched, eyes fixed on the juicy fruit. Thirst can't be quenched by just looking. I needed to taste it. After giving her several assurances, the plum finally seemed within reach. I kissed her softly, but pulled back almost immediately, feeling hesitant. Sarah instinctively started to follow my movement, but stopped herself just before our lips touched again. "If you're going to be that hesitant," she said, her easygoing tone gently coaxing me, "don't bother. Open your mouth. Lean in." I wrapped my arms around her neck, moving closer. This time, escaping easily wasn't an option. She held me fiercely. Meanwhile, Chloe, after hanging up, arrived at the hotel entrance. She was still pondering the male voice she'd heard on the call, which sounded strangely familiar. Lost in her thoughts, she walked into the lobby and saw her grandfather, Mr. Evans, sitting on a sofa calmly eating an apple. He looked up at her as if he'd seen a ghost. "Ah, Chloe, why are you here?" "No classes today, so I came back to see you," Chloe replied. Mr. Evans suddenly realized something must have gone wrong. He quickly checked his phone and discovered his mistake. He had mistakenly sent the message intended to lure Chloe to the hotel room to Sarah instead. By now, over an hour had passed since Mark had gone upstairs. Mr. Evans's mind went blank. His plan was to set Chloe up with Mark at the hotel, but things had taken a completely unexpected turn. "Grandpa, don't try to set me up with Mark anymore, okay?" Chloe said, bracing herself for the usual lecture from her grandfather. But this time, unusually, he remained silent for a long moment before finally agreeing. Then he added, "Actually, I'm thinking of matching Mark with your Aunt Sarah instead." Chloe froze, her phone still in her hand. A complex mix of emotions swelled up inside her. After years of being entangled with Mark, she had subconsciously started to see him as her fiancé, almost like her possession. Hearing that he might marry someone else, even her aunt, brought an unexpected wave of agitation. She coolly shut down the idea, supposedly on Mark's behalf. "That's not going to happen. Aunt Sarah doesn't like Mark, and besides, he has someone else he likes." Mr. Evans just sneered. "Why do you care so much if you supposedly like Sam? You know, I was actually planning on finding Sam once you got engaged to Mark. I was going to tell him all about it so he'd give up on you completely." Chloe froze again, her phone slipping from her grasp and clattering onto the floor. "What did you just say?" So the anonymous message in her past life hadn't actually come from Mark after all? What Chloe didn't know at that moment was that the aunt she seemed to look down upon was currently questioning me about responsibility. The Sarah I thought I knew was usually quiet and reserved. I didn't fully grasp the meaning behind her questions and the conversation unfolding in that hotel room. She gently unclasped my tight grip on the pillow, her fingers intertwining with mine. Looking down at me, she asked softly, "Who am I?" I avoided answering the question directly. She gently forced me to look at her. Sweat dripped from her forehead, mingling with her damp hair near her temples. Her clear eyes held an incredible allure. She slowly asked again, "Want to take a look in the mirror together?" I reluctantly complied. "Sarah," I mumbled. "Say it again," she prompted. "Sarah?" "How pathetic," she murmured, though it wasn't clear if she meant me or the situation. Why couldn't I just have passed out from whatever was affecting me, like characters in novels? Instead, I had to face this entire situation wide awake. Luckily, I managed to turn away from Sarah, burying my face in the pillow again, pretending to be asleep. "Stop pretending," her soft voice came from beside me. "I know you're awake." Her words shattered the composure I was trying so hard to maintain. I squeezed my eyes shut tighter, determined to play dead until the end. Sarah chuckled softly. "Forget it then." Suddenly, my wrist was grabbed. I instantly tensed up, my eyes flying open. She was staring right at me. My ears grew warm. I pressed my lips together and said nothing. Sarah got up, loosely wrapping her robe around herself. She walked over to a cabinet, picked up her phone, and turned it on. After a few seconds, she turned the screen towards me. The large numbers, 110 inches, the emergency number in China, often used fictionally for police, displayed on it made my blood pressure spike. The woman had an amused look on her face. "Remember what I told you before?" she asked lightly. Was she really going to call me out for what had just happened? Just as I was frantically trying to figure out how to handle this new development, there was a sudden knock on the door. "Mark, I know you're in there. Open the door. I need to talk to you." It was Chloe's voice. More trouble. I looked towards the door, feeling completely lost. Chloe continued talking insistently from outside. Sarah, looking slightly annoyed, walked over and simply opened the door. "What is it? Do you have to bother us right now?" Sarah asked coolly. Chloe paused for a couple of seconds, clearly surprised. "Auntie Sarah, why are you here? Didn't Grandpa say Mark was here?" Lying there in the bed, a wave of hopelessness washed over me. Even though I couldn't hear Sarah's reply, I could already foresee the potential storm brewing. Until, Auntie, is your boyfriend inside? Chloe seemed to be piecing things together, perhaps recalling the phone call earlier. Maybe Grandpa mixed things up. I'll go ask at Mark's place. Then she smiled, seemingly reaching an understanding. Sorry to disturb you and your uncle. Give my regards to him. Not until Sarah closed the door did I fully realize what had just happened. Had Chloe's cluelessness somehow saved us from an unavoidable crisis? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah walking back towards the bed. Hastily, I picked up my phone, trying to look busy and avoid the previous awkward topic. What are you doing? Sarah asked, standing beside the bed. I bit my lip. Buying medicine? Sarah raised an eyebrow. What kind? I hesitated for a couple of seconds, then decided not to hide it. Birth control. A soft laugh came from above me. Her eyes held a lazy amusement as she spoke. Why would I need it? I clenched the blanket tightly, feeling annoyed and strangely wronged. Because of me, I mumbled. What's wrong with you? Sarah asked, her expression calm, which only made me feel more aggrieved. No longer wanting to argue, I silently looked down, continuing to search for emergency contraceptive pills online. My phone was suddenly taken from my hand and tossed aside onto the nightstand. The woman gently brushed a finger near my slightly red eyes. Her voice was unusually gentle. Stop worrying. I've already taken care of it. I was stunned, trying to recall that part of our encounter. Sarah must have thought I didn't believe her, because she patiently added, every time. She even pointed towards the small trash can near the bedside table, jokingly asking, Want to check? I didn't actually look, but fragments of memory finally started coming back. With the lingering effects of Mr. Evans's special aroma, I had acted quite forwardly. I remembered Sarah dodging my attempts to kiss her, gently coaxing, Wait a bit. I recalled chasing after her, mumbling, Can't wait, Sarah. She had taken a deep breath, reached for something on the bedside table, touched her ear briefly, and asked, No more kisses? The reason in Sarah's eyes seemed to break. Can't let you smell this again, she'd murmured. I was confused. A moment later, just before she kissed me again, she had quickly taken something. So much embarrassment had almost numbed me. So when Sarah later asked me to carry her to the bathroom, I only hesitated for a brief moment. Then she stretched out her hands towards me. Well, be my guest, she teased lightly. A soft chuckle escaped her as she nestled into my neck while I walked towards the bathroom. You're welcome, she murmured against my skin. That day, Sarah asked me again if I would be responsible for her. Noticing my indecision, she didn't press the issue. She just calmly mentioned, Your father's company is having some cash flow problems, isn't it? And now that Chloe has called off the engagement, your family will likely be looking to find a new match for you soon. The next morning, on my way home from the hotel, I was mulling over Sarah's words. However, seeing Chloe waiting downstairs near my apartment building temporarily pushed those thoughts aside. Fatigue was evident in her eyes, and her voice was colder than the morning mist as she confronted me. Explain yourself. Why didn't you answer your phone all night? You didn't come home. Where were you? I looked away, avoiding her gaze. It's none of your business. After leaving the hotel yesterday afternoon, I had been too exhausted mentally and physically to face my dad, so I had gone to a nearby apartment I owned privately. There was no need to explain all this to Chloe. When she approached me, the chill emanating from her seemed even more pronounced. None of your business? She gave a faint, humorless smile. Mark, we haven't officially told everyone about calling off the engagement yet. Technically, I'm still your fiancé. You spending the night out somewhere else is my business. Chloe spoke with a sense of entitlement that felt familiar, echoing behavior from our previous life. This situation had happened before. During my internship, I had to accompany my boss on a last-minute business trip for a day and hadn't notified anyone beforehand. On the third day, I returned to find Chloe waiting outside my apartment building. She still had faint lipstick stains on her neck from her own nights out, yet she furiously questioned me about where I had been. The woman standing before me now seemed to overlap with that memory. I looked at her in disbelief. "You publicly took Sam away from the engagement dinner, even before officially canceling anything with me, right?" I countered. Chloe stared at me for a long moment, clearly annoyed. She then gave a cold smirk. "Do you know what annoys me the most about you, Mark?" Her gaze was scrutinizing, judgmental. "It's your small-minded jealousy and how you don't even bother to hide it. Don't you think you're being completely unpleasant?" I was taken aback for a moment. I had just been stating facts to refute her claim, and I hadn't expected her to interpret it as jealousy. Chloe shook her head, stepping back slightly to maintain a distance between us. "I thought maybe I had misunderstood you in the past, but now, even if you didn't send that text message back then, you still get jealous like this. You're really no match for Sam." With that parting shot, she turned to leave, giving me one last disappointed look. "Chloe," I called out, just as she was about to walk away. "Even if I were jealous, it wouldn't be because of you. You really think too highly of yourself." I added firmly, "Stop showing up here again. If you come near me again, I'll call the cops." I turned and headed back towards my apartment building without looking back. Jealousy and losing control. I had heard those accusations from her many times before. Chloe's attitude towards me had shifted over time from harsh blame to casual mockery. Standing back and looking at the situation now, completely devoid of any lingering romantic feelings for Chloe, I realized I had wasted far too much unnecessary time and energy tangled up with her. After that day, Chloe unilaterally announced the cancellation of our engagement to her family. Sarah had been right. The very next day, my father, anxious about the family company's finances, couldn't wait to introduce me to a new potential marriage prospect. Initially, I planned to just go through the motions, meet the person briefly, and get it over with. But things took a surprising turn right from the start. "Honestly, I'm kind of into your type," my blind date, Jessica, began candidly in the restaurant. I couldn't bring myself to say anything. If I admitted that the strong odor emanating from her expensive $30,000 shoes was completely putting me off my meal, she'd probably leave immediately, and then my dad would definitely be furious with me. As I was contemplating how to respond politely, a familiar voice interjected. "Who do you like?" I instinctively looked up. Sarah stood there, a scarf draped elegantly over her arm. Her wavy hair cascaded casually down her chest, looking slightly messy, but adding to her effortless style. There was an air of leisurely elegance about her, the kind cultivated from moving comfortably in high social circles. She looked at Jessica with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sarah, what a coincidence. I'm actually here on a blind date," Jessica said, standing up quickly. Almost instantly, an intense gaze landed on me. If Sarah's look could be translated into temperature, I felt like I'd already be sizzling. "Sarah, would you like to join us for a meal?" Jessica asked politely, perhaps surprised that Sarah hadn't left immediately. Unexpectedly, Sarah really did sit down at our table. "You two continue," she said casually, picking up a fork and fiddling with a piece of broccoli on her plate. "Pretend I'm not here." I nodded at Jessica, trying to resume the awkward date. "Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with you," Jessica continued, "but there's one thing I really care about and need to ask." She hesitated, then awkwardly asked, "Is it still your first time?" I was dumbfounded. "What?" I asked, unsure I'd heard correctly. She smacked her lips slightly, looking a little embarrassed. "It's just, I kinda care about that sort of thing." Sarah abruptly halted her movements with the fork. My hand under the table clenched into a tight fist. A sense of being uncomfortably exposed seemed to flood my senses. I was about to speak, perhaps defensively, when in the corner of my eye, I noticed Sarah's fork hitting the table lightly, making a small clinking sound. "What's wrong, Sarah? Is the food not appetizing? I can order something else for you," Jessica offered solicitously. Sarah laughed, but her tone was icy. "No, I just think you're quite interesting." She looked directly at Jessica. "How does someone who reportedly sleeps with different men frequently have the nerve to expect a guy to remain completely inexperienced for you until you decide you're ready?" Jessica's face flushed red, yet she stubbornly insisted she was in the right. "Sarah, you don't understand. His family is essentially arranging a marriage for financial reasons. I'm lowering my standards considerably because he looks decent. To be honest, even if I demand he adheres to strict traditional roles after marriage, Mark would have no choice but to agree." I quietly listened, my hand slowly reaching for the bowl of soup placed in front of me. My next action might very well be to pour that soup over her head. I had been holding back my irritation all evening, but this was rapidly becoming my breaking point. Sarah seemed to sense my rising anger and subtly moved the soup bowl away from my reach. Instead, Sarah placed the soup directly in front of Jessica and laughed softly, pointing at the reflective surface of the soup. "Look at yourself in there. Can you even see who you really are?" In the next shocking moment, Sarah unexpectedly pushed Jessica's head down towards the edge of the soup bowl. Sarah's eyes reflected a rebellious, almost defiant air. "He doesn't even think I'm good enough for him," Sarah stated coolly. "So, who do you think you are? You're just desperately maintaining appearances by clinging to your family's fading glory." Finally, Sarah released Jessica, who sputtered and choked on the soup. Sarah calmly sat back in her chair, wiping a few splashes of soup off her hand with a napkin. Without looking up, she gave a quiet order. "Get out?" Then she added, "Tell your father to come and explain himself to me personally tomorrow." She didn't lift her eyes to look at me until Jessica had scrambled away. At that moment, I was resting my chin on my hand, watching Sarah with an undeniable grin on my face. She snorted, looking somewhat awkward herself now. "What are you laughing at?" she demanded lightly. "You just slept with me, and now you're immediately off meeting someone new. I haven't even confronted you about that yet." Hearing her mention our night together made me feel a pang of guilt. Without Jessica's distracting foot odor lingering in the air, my appetite suddenly returned. I started eating and drinking, perhaps a bit too much. By the time the meal ended and it was time to pay, I was already feeling tipsy. It's fine, Sarah. I'll pay, I insist," I declared, perhaps a bit too loudly, taking the social custom of insisting on paying the bill to an extreme level. The waiter remained professional, smiling politely. "No need, Mr. Mark. Miss Sarah always takes care of the bill here." I paused, blinking, my payment code still displayed on my phone screen. Sarah didn't give me time to react further. She came over to my side. "Can you walk on your own?" she asked softly. I gave it some thought, feeling bolder than usual thanks to the alcohol. "If you hold on to me while we walk," I replied cheekily, "I might grudgingly agree." Sarah chuckled softly. She took my hand right there in public and confidently led me out of the restaurant. Her familiar, sweet scent enveloped me, clearing away the lingering unpleasantness Jessica had left behind. My nose was practically buried against Sarah's collarbone as we walked. Involuntarily, I leaned in slightly and took another subtle whiff. Sarah glanced down at me, her voice calm but knowing. "Are you being affectionate now because you think I've forgiven you for the blind date?" she murmured. Despite her words, she held my hand a bit tighter. I was drowsily leaning against her side as we walked down the street until another familiar voice interrupted us. "Auntie Sarah, what are you doing with Mark?" It was Chloe, watching us with a complex expression on her face. Sam stood beside her, looking uncomfortable. Sarah gave her niece a quick, dismissive glance. "Do I need to report who I'm with to you, Chloe?" Chloe pressed her lips together tightly, her eyes landing on our joined hands. "Mark's drunk, isn't he?" she observed. "That's just how he is. A little bit of alcohol and he gets like this. I know him well. Let me take care of him. He'll just end up going crazy and troubling you otherwise." Hearing this, I jolted slightly more awake. I looked at Sarah, who showed no intention of letting go of my hand, and then back at Chloe. Our eyes met, and Chloe's expression suddenly darkened. My false bravado instantly evaporated, and I desperately held on to Sarah's arm, whispering urgently, "You can't hand me over to her." Sarah laughed, a soft vibration in her chest against my arm. Then she simply said 2 words to Chloe, "Let's go," and walked off, pulling me along with her. The next memory connects directly to the following morning. I rubbed my groggy head as I went downstairs, mentally preparing myself. I was fully expecting my dad to scold me for the disastrous blind date, but seeing him looking calm and unusually friendly was actually more unsettling than facing his usual anger. "Mark, did you sleep well?" he asked cheerfully. I didn't dare speak, not saying a single word. "My son," he continued, beaming, "doing so well for himself, even managing to marry someone of such high status." I paused for a moment, confused. Then I asked cautiously, "Dad, are you planning on having me marry that 57-year-old Mr. Wang after all?" My dad's smile froze on his face. "Being with Sarah seems to have made you change. From silly to rather endearing. It's different." I was stunned. Suddenly, forgotten memories from the previous night rushed back. Last night, Sarah had driven me home. I struggled clumsily with the seatbelt buckle in my drunken state. Sarah leaned over from the driver's seat to help me, and as she did, I happened to look up. Our lips brushed accidentally. Sarah didn't move away immediately. Her eyes slowly dropped to just below my nose. In the small, confined space of the car, the sound of our breathing seemed amplified, heightening the tension. Just when I thought Sarah might lean in or do something more, she pulled back with a mocking little smile. "I won't give you another chance to take advantage of me without any kind of commitment," she murmured. Fueled by alcohol, and still remembering how good she felt to kiss, I felt a wave of defeat. I still distinctly remembered thinking she was quite a good kisser. To prevent any further accidental kisses, Sarah supported me very reservedly as she helped me into the house. My dad was surprised to see Sarah bringing me home, but quickly masked it with a warm, welcoming smile. I couldn't recall much of the conversation that happened between them after that. The one thing I did remember clearly was Sarah leaning close to my ear later, whispering so only I could hear, "Marry me, and I'll let you kiss me." As if worried I might refuse, she quickly sweetened the deal, adding, "You can kiss me as much as you want." Was she treating me like a simpleton? But the image of Sarah sending Jessica packing earlier that evening was still fresh in my mind, and it had definitely made my heart beat faster. Plus, knowing my dad was determined to push for a beneficial marriage for the sake of the family company anyway, it seemed inevitable. Ultimately, right there in front of everyone, in a rare moment of alcohol-induced clarity, I agreed to marry Sarah. Yes, it started as something like an alliance. Along with the small bit of fondness I was already feeling for her, I still primarily saw it as a marriage of convenience, a logical decision made after weighing the pros and cons for my family and myself. Much later, I would come to realize that everything Sarah did for me, even back then, stemmed from genuine affection. Maybe if I had been given a real choice, or if I had realized her feelings sooner, things might have played out differently in the beginning. But ultimately, the outcome would likely have remained the same. In any possible scenario, I ended up falling in love with Sarah and marrying her. That part felt like a constant. Mr. Evans, perhaps feeling a bit guilty about the hotel room key mix-up, hadn't contacted me directly since that incident. However, once Sarah and I officially set our engagement date, he finally called. He invited me to join him for lunch. When I arrived, I found that Chloe was there too. Sarah was apparently still on her way. Mr. Evans met me awkwardly a few steps from the door. "Ha ha, Mark, you're here! Ha ha ha!" he greeted me, forcing a laugh that made me feel slightly speechless. Later, when it was just Chloe and me in the living room waiting, she frowned and spoke up. "You're here today to discuss your engagement details, right?" I simply nodded, not wanting to engage in a longer conversation. "Mark, do you really think you're being fair?" I could hear the irritation simmering in her voice. I looked at her, completely confused by her question. "Okay, I admit it," she continued, surprisingly candid. "I'm starting to kind of like you now, but trying to push me into marrying you using family pressure, that's just going to backfire, you know?" I was too shocked by her admission and her misinterpretation of the situation to even respond. Chloe got up, brushing off her hoodie, still maintaining an air of superiority. "Forcing me to marry you won't work. If I decide not to show up to the engagement party, you'll be the one left standing there looking awkward and foolish." I opened my mouth, considered saying something, then closed it again in silence. We were at Sarah's family home. It wouldn't be polite to start arguing rudely with her niece right now. Chloe's misplaced pride finally cracked spectacularly at dinner. The sound of chopsticks hitting the floor startled her as the engagement was formally discussed. "What did you guys just say?" she demanded, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Auntie Sarah and Mark are engaged?" She let out a high-pitched, incredulous laugh. "Come on. You have to be kidding, right? They're not even in the same generation." Sarah just nodded calmly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Soon, you won't be in the same generation either, Chloe. You'd better start practicing calling him Uncle Mark." I was internally debating whether to adopt a wise and forgiving elder look towards Chloe when she suddenly pushed her bowl away violently and stormed off to her room in a sulk. Later that night, Sarah had had a bit to drink. As soon as we got into the car to leave, she asked the driver to raise the partition between the front and back seats. Instantly, my internal alarm bells started ringing. But just then, Chloe, who had apparently chased after us, interrupted by rapping on the car window. She posed a testing question directly to Sarah. "Are you absolutely sure you want to marry him, Auntie Sarah?" Sarah lazily leaned back against her seat, rolling down the window slightly. Chloe's gaze went past Sarah, landing directly on me. There was a mocking gleam in her eyes, as if she could already envision me failing miserably in this marriage. "Auntie Sarah, you might not know this," Chloe continued, her voice dripping with false concern, "but the guy you're about to marry used to be utterly, completely fixated on me." Sarah kept her head slightly lowered, making it impossible to read her expression. For some reason, I felt a knot of nervousness tighten in my stomach. Chloe clearly picked up on my subtle reaction and laughed, her tone becoming even more leisurely and confident. "Mark has this old notebook," she revealed, scribbled from edge to edge with every little detail about his crush on me. "Auntie Sarah, are you really sure you want to marry a guy who had such intense feelings for your own niece?" The hand I had resting on the car seat tightened involuntarily with every word she spoke. Chloe was Sarah's niece, after all. The chance of Sarah siding with me over her own family member felt incredibly slim, especially after Chloe had just publicly embarrassed her like that. Sarah draped one hand casually over the window ledge, then lifted her wrist slightly, subtly signaling for me to look at Chloe. When our eyes met, Chloe wore a triumphant, knowing smile. "See, Mark, Auntie Sarah's just telling you to leave her and come with me. There's no way she'd actually choose you over her family." Sarah ignored Chloe completely and asked me quietly, "Did you hear all of her insults just now?" I wasn't sure about her intentions, so I just nodded silently. A shadow fell over my view as Sarah leaned in closer. A barely visible smile played at the corners of her lips. Her voice was low, almost hypnotic. "Mark, don't chicken out now. Insult her back." Stunned, I looked up at her in disbelief. "I'm here," she continued softly. "Not just to stand up for you, but also to give you the confidence to do whatever you want." She narrowed her eyes slightly and raised an eyebrow suggestively. "Like, right now, wouldn't it feel much better to just give it right back to her yourself?" Her words convinced me completely, almost as if I were possessed. I leaned towards the open window, but before I said anything, I turned back to Sarah for confirmation. "You really got my back on this?" Her nod was almost imperceptible, a silent promise. I pressed my lips together, my gaze firming as I looked directly at Chloe. The hand resting against the window balled into a fist. After a moment of tense silence, I spoke, my voice clear and cold. "Go to hell, Chloe." I continued, letting out the pent-up frustration. "The biggest regret of my entire life is that stupid notebook. Tomorrow I'm getting a brand new one, and I'm going to fill it with every single curse I can possibly think of, directed squarely at you." Chloe's face contorted, clearly shocked and angered, not expecting that reaction, especially with Sarah seemingly supporting me. She glared at me, her expression as severe as a thunderstorm, even as the car began to drive away. I was lost in the sudden rush of adrenaline, feeling like I had finally been vindicated after so long. I didn't immediately realize how close I had leaned towards Sarah just to deliver that verbal blow to Chloe. Now, I was practically right next to her in the back seat. "Feel better now?" Sarah asked. Her amused smile held a playful, almost teasing undertone. That question felt loaded. Was she asking about the satisfaction of finally telling Chloe off, or was she referring to the way I was currently positioned so close to her? Just as I tried to casually shift back to my side of the seat, the driver unexpectedly hit the brakes for a traffic light. The sudden stop sent me lurching forward, almost yelping, directly towards Sarah. I instinctively put my hand out to brace myself, landing it near her shoulder. I tried to pull my hand away quickly, flustered, but she wouldn't let me. Instead, she gently pushed me right back into her arms. Sarah was clearly settling the score for my earlier hesitation, or perhaps rewarding my outburst. A warm breath lingered on my palm, tickling slightly. It wasn't just my palm that was tingling, my heart was too. Her low voice slipped through my fingers as she murmured something unintelligible. I pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, feeling unsure. Sarah looked amused. "Why not find another spot to continue?" she suggested softly. Moonlight traced the outline of her eyes, making them look crisp and classic, like snowy pines in winter. The erratic thumping of my heart easily shattered the faint sense of calm I was trying to maintain. I knew she had completely captivated me even before I fully realized I was leaning back into her shoulder. Our eyes naturally drifted down towards each other's lips, until finally, they met. I found myself trying to recall every detail from that first day when we had kissed in a hazy, confused state. But maybe because Sarah had been drinking tonight, this time she seized control immediately and decisively. She cupped my chin, forcefully yet gently prying open my mouth. She adjusted our angles now and then, sometimes briefly pulling away only to tilt her head to the other side before re-engaging the kiss with renewed intensity. Midway through, a flicker of clarity surfaced in my mind. I tried weakly pushing her shoulder away. "The driver can't hear us," Sarah whispered, slightly out of breath, misunderstanding my hesitation, or perhaps choosing to ignore it. "Let's keep going." And then she pulled me back into her intoxicating hold. Chloe didn't end up with Sam after all. This news came directly from Chloe herself, surprisingly enough. She found me one afternoon at a quiet cafe where I was working on a group project for university. The chair across from me was abruptly pulled out, and someone sat down. "I heard from Grandpa," Chloe began without preamble. You and Sarah are planning to get married soon." It was the first time I had heard her use her aunt's actual name, not just Auntie Sarah, so I glanced up at her from my laptop. There was a visible sadness in her eyes that even her attractive features couldn't completely mask. "I had a dream once, Mark," she said, then chuckled humorlessly and shook her head. "In the dream, I misunderstood you completely and did a bunch of things that really hurt you. The only good part about it was that despite everything, you still liked me. In the dream." She lowered her eyes, a smile mixed with bitterness playing on her lips. Turns out dreams really do go the opposite of reality sometimes. Here, in real life, I haven't even done anything truly awful to you this time around. But you already don't like me anymore. I didn't have the energy or the inclination to argue with her about pointless hypothetical situations or her interpretation of reality. Suddenly, I remembered something important. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, simple ring engraved with my initial M. I held it out, intending to return it to Chloe, assuming it was originally hers or meant for her in some way. She looked at the ring in my hand and then said calmly, "So you two even bought matching couple rings." Her simple sentence threw me off balance. I felt like I didn't quite understand what Chloe was saying. "Last time," she continued, oblivious to my confusion, "I saw a matching women's ring at Sarah's place. I just didn't expect the men's version to be in your hand already." It felt like being suddenly submerged underwater, suffocating, with her words reaching me from a distance, distorted and faint. Her comment pulled me back into even more distant memories, ones from the previous life. In that past life, I had sensed that Chloe was falling for Sam. I was upset about it, but didn't want to stand in their way. Just as I was planning to talk to her about it, maybe even end things, I received a small gift box. Inside was this very ring. At the time, I foolishly assumed it was a gift from Chloe, a sign, perhaps. I never once considered it might have come from Sarah, that night when Chloe came to see me, likely for reasons unrelated to the ring. I was so thrilled and relieved, thinking the ring confirmed her feelings, that I hugged her tightly and boldly confessed, "Chloe, I really like you." Chloe didn't push me away immediately. After a slight pause, she hugged me back loosely. "I know," she had said softly. "And you?" I had lifted my head from her embrace, hopeful. Chloe gently pressed my head back against her shoulder, so I couldn't see her face. "I never said I didn't like you," she had replied, ambiguously. That subtle distinction was completely lost on me at the time, thanks to my high hopes and dopamine levels. If it weren't for my misinterpretation of that ring's origin and meaning, we probably wouldn't have ended up getting engaged in that first life. Chloe's current question brought me sharply back to the present reality. My gaze fell on the ring in my hand again. Understanding dawned. I slowly slipped the ring onto my own finger. "What did you just call me?" I asked her, deliberately setting her up. Chloe didn't seem to notice my intention. "Mark," she repeated simply. I gave her a smile, a genuine one I hadn't shown her in a long time. "Remember to start practicing calling me uncle-in-law soon, okay?" Without another word, Chloe stood up and left the cafe. I gave a small, satisfied nod to her retreating figure, confident she wouldn't come back to pester me again like this. I didn't ask Sarah about the ring right away, but there was a nagging question I couldn't shake. If she had given me the ring back then, why hadn't she said anything? I stared at the ring on my finger, digging through fragmented memories of Sarah from that period. Then it hit me. The very night I had confessed my feelings to Chloe, hugging her outside my apartment, I distinctly remembered noticing a dark Rolls-Royce Cullinan parked down the street, facing us. It was too dark at the time to see who was inside, and the car drove away quietly into the night shortly after. Not long ago, I had seen an identical Cullinan parked in Sarah's garage. The realization settled heavily. She wasn't silent out of indifference. She had likely seen me confessing my love to her niece. Seeing me seemingly in love with someone else, she chose not to intervene or reveal her own actions or feelings until the day of our engagement. Sarah wore the matching women's ring. The engagement party itself went smoothly, without any major incidents. The only slightly awkward moment came when a friend I knew from my internship approached me. His own wife was 7 or 8 years older than him. He gave me a knowing, slightly pitying look and said, "Bro, just cut your wife some slack sometimes, all right?" Then he patted my shoulder sympathetically. Confused, I looked at him. "Just a heads up," he whispered conspiratorially. "Being older than you means, well, she ages faster too, you know." He leaned in closer. As women get older, they tend to get tired more easily. Sarah didn't let me drink much alcohol that night, expertly turning down almost every toast directed at us. I was full of admiration for my fiancée, watching her navigate the social interactions with grace. My admiration hit a peak during the party, only to come crashing down later that night in Sarah's apartment. She had me playfully pinned on the couch, lightly tapping my face. "So," she began, her voice husky and undeniably sexy, likely influenced by the champagne she'd consumed. "How exactly am I old, according to you?" That's when I realized she must have overheard my friend's clumsy advice. "I didn't mean it like that," I protested in a tiny voice. "I was even thinking about getting you some supplements." If I had known that careless comment would nearly get me into serious trouble later that night, I would have kept my mouth firmly shut. I had no clear recollection of when or how we moved from the couch to the bedroom later on. At one point, I found myself with my face buried in a pillow, trying to catch my breath. Her hand, adorned with the matching engagement ring, lay gently over mine on the bed. Our intertwined fingers made the rings clink together softly. "So, you like them young, she teased, her voice still carrying a hint of amusement. My own voice was hoarse from exertion. Desperation had me shaking my head vigorously against the pillow. No, I only like you." It was like a roller coaster coming to a sudden, jarring halt. Everything felt strangely still for a moment. "Really?" Sarah asked, her voice softer now, turning me gently to face her. She stared at me intently. Feeling suddenly quite shy under her direct gaze, it took me a long moment to meet her clear, slightly anxious eyes. Sniffling slightly, I slowly reached up, wrapped my arms around her neck, and answered with conviction, "Really, Sarah, today is the day I'm sure I like you." It wasn't precisely true, of course. Looking back, I realized I had liked her yesterday, and probably a month ago too, and there had been countless small moments where my heart had fluttered because of her. But today was the first time I had actually voiced it out loud, acknowledged it fully to myself and to her, so I decided to mark today as my official first day of liking her. Sarah's long, slightly greedy kiss was her response. Between breaths, she softly admitted, "Mine started way earlier than yours." The next afternoon, I found myself sitting in the study, flipping open a brand new journal I had prepared. I carefully wrote down yesterday's date. Then, just for fun, I added a note underneath. "The first day of liking Sarah. Almost didn't survive. High danger level. Planning to tentatively reduce my affection level by 0.1% today. However, if she lets me sleep peacefully tonight, the affection scale can potentially go up by 10%. A sliver of sunlight crept across the page, moving from my ring finger, still adorned with the new engagement ring, to my index finger resting on the paper. I finally put the pen down. Before closing the journal, something else came to mind. I turned back to the very front page. Carefully, thoughtfully, I wrote down a few words. Moments of heart flutter.